Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the 143, coming at you live with episode 166. Under review, we're here today with a very special guest, our college basketball insider, Seth Goble. You may remember him from last year, giving you all your great picks for March Madness this year.
Yep, as tradition, it's our March Madness episode, which me and Joseph have very limited knowledge on, so we brought in our expert, Seth Goble. He's going to be giving us all the picks and all the information that we need for March Madness.
It's for liability reasons as well, so when your bracket busts, you can blame Seth and not us. So, Seth, how we doing today?
Doing pretty good. How are y'all?
Doing good, man. Let's get it rolling. Stat of the week brought to you by Andrews Logistics. Interesting stat for you. A lot of people believe that North Carolina should not be in this year's tournament, but they got put in by the selection committee with only going one win and 12 losses against quad one teams this season. Needless to say, if you want an explanation on that, it's pretty bad against good teams. At North Carolina played this season, and the one of the chairman, or the chairman, I guess, of the selection committee is North Carolina's athletic director. And he also got a $104,000 bonus for his team making it in. So I think it's worth noting that there could be a little bit of colluding going on there with North Carolina getting in. But I'm sure Seth will have something to say about that later. But that's your stat of the week, brought to you by Andrews Logistics.
Yeah, your player of the week, bringing it back to the sport that we're looking forward to. The more important sport, obviously. Nathan Eovaldi, the Texas Rangers opening day starter, will be going back-to-back. He was the starter last year opening day. He's going to be the starter again this year. Looking to kick the season off right with a series against the Boston Red Sox here pretty soon, actually. Sooner than I think it's going to be starting
next week.
Not this upcoming week, but the next, not this Thursday, but next Thursday. So, going to be looking forward to that one.
Oh, yeah.
Kicking the season off for the Rangers winning the World Series in 2025.
There we go. All right. March Madness. It is upon us. Seth, let's start you off with the thoughts on the North Carolina debate, because it's been kind of taking the sports world by storm this week.
Yeah, I definitely thought it was interesting. North Carolina is definitely one of the more prestigious programs, so they're always going to get the benefit of the doubt, even when they don't necessarily play the best. But, they took care of a lot of the worst teams in the ACC, and the ACC is really weak, and North Carolina, at the end of the year, was playing pretty good. They made the ACC semifinal, ultimately losing to Duke off one of their players having a lane violation. But as we kind of know, the committee set a precedent where the conference tournaments don't really matter for seeding. You see Auburn still getting the number one overall seed despite losing in the semifinal, and Florida winning theirs, Duke winning theirs. So obviously I think North Carolina did get the benefit of the doubt, but if you look at the other teams that got left out, where West Virginia and Indiana were the two big snubs. But I don't really think Indiana deserved it. They lost games they shouldn't have, and if anyone should have gotten it would have been West Virginia. They've beat some good teams, have a bunch of quad one wins. Pretty hard to beat at home, but I think if it's head-to-head between West Virginia and North Carolina, they're always going to get it to North Carolina for viewership reasons.
Yeah, I know West Virginia, the state of West Virginia, is also seeking legal action now. I don't think that really does anything for them, but they're doing something, maybe suing or, threatening to take the selection committee to court or something like that. So West Virginia is not too happy about it. I wouldn't be either if I was a West Virginia fan. But a lot of controversy brewing there. Nick, got a question for Seth about the bracket?
Who is the sleeper? It's every single year there's a 13 to below seed that kind of just sneaks up on you, has a big upset, and has two magical games. So who is that for Seth?
Yeah, this year has been really hard because I think the top is very, very good with the 1, 2, and 3 seeds being good. But if I was going to choose a team to go far that's a sleeper team, and it pains me to say this, but I think Yale could beat Texas A&M in the first round and then ultimately beat Michigan or UC San Diego in the second round. Yale's very good rebounding. They're a good shooting team. A&M, is not the greatest offensive team out there. They're also a good rebounding team, but whenever they go against someone who is good at rebounding, they're not as good. And A&M also is not – their turnover ratio is pretty bad, so A&M turns the ball over a lot. So if they go against a good defensive team, then they'll also struggle there. So I think Yale could make a pretty big splash this March.
Yeah, I have A&M losing game 1 to Yale. I'm a realistic Aggie fan. I'm watching our baseball team. I watched our football team last year. I've watched our basketball team every year they've been in the tournament. It's been nothing but disappointment. So, just out of spite at this point, I'm picking us to lose. But I will be shocked if we get one win in the tournament.
Yeah, this A&M team's just kind of they definitely have their ceiling, and they got guys who just like to chuck up threes, and that normally doesn't work out well in March. And obviously, you want to choose teams that make their free throws down the stretch. A&M shoots the free throw at like 69%, which is pretty bad as a team overall, and that doesn't normally work out too well in March.
Yeah, looking at these 1 seeds, Auburn, Florida, Duke, and Houston, you think any one of these 4 or multiple are overrated for these people doing their brackets? Because obviously, you're doing your bracket. It's hard to pick against the 1 seed, no matter who they're playing, just because they're that 1 seed. Which ones are overrated?
Honestly, I think these 1 seeds have been by far the best 4 teams all year. Auburn, you see, they struggled a little bit down the line, but you look at their resume, they have a bunch of quad 1 wins. They beat Alabama at Alabama. They did lose to Duke. They did lose to Florida. So 2 of their losses have come to the other 1 seeds, but I don't really think you can make a case for any of the 2 seeds being ranked higher. And honestly, to be honest, I don't see any of the 1 seeds losing before the Sweet 16. And honestly, I see most of them going to the Elite 8, if not all of them. Just they've been dominant all year. I don't see that stopping anytime soon.
Who is the biggest fraud of those 4?
I'd have to say Auburn. They've kind of been on a downhill spiral. They did get the number 1 overall seed, and to be honest, I really don't think they deserved it. I think it should have been Duke as the 1 seed and then Auburn as the 2 seed, or Auburn as the number 2 1 seed. But Auburn's kind of they've lost 3 out of their last 4. You've kind of seen the players' attitudes are negatively affected. Obviously, everyone remembers last year Auburn lost to Yale in the first round. So they have been a fraudulent March team in the recent past. But I don't think Auburn will win at all. I think they peaked too early, as some would say, and they just haven't been doing good down the stretch.
Looking at the SEC as being kind of the best conference, they said this year in college basketball, the toughest conference to play in. Should there be real SEC bias when going through these brackets just because their conference was harder to play in? So, Vanderbilt, what are they, a 10 seed, taking them just because they're part of the SEC, or just taking a team because they play in the SEC. How real is that this year? Is that something, that would be smart to do, looking at their conference and how tough it would be? Or would you say just to play it straight up and not think about the conference?
Yeah, I think I do have a lot of SEC bias, and that comes from a lot of reasons. But I think taking the SEC is going to be safer this year than most. If you look at their out-of-conference record, I think they had the highest record of all time with like a win percentage over like 95%. So most of these teams, like such as Vanderbilt, they had 1 loss going into conference play, and then they went like 9-9 or something like that, and they still got a 10 seed. Where like St. Mary's didn't really have a lot of competition in the West Coast, so they're seated a little higher despite probably not being as good of a team. I just think when it comes down to it, I don't think a lot of teams are going to be able to keep up with the SEC this year after everything they've gone through. Most of the SEC teams are used to playing in hostile environments, so playing on neutral floors, I think, will benefit the SEC team more than anything, just because it's going to be neutral. SEC fans typically travel pretty well, so I think SEC teams are going to make a big run this tournament.
Who are we looking at as a bounce back team from like a high seed that got bounced early last year coming into the tournament this year? Who are we looking at that's going to be one of those teams that makes that deep run?
This is going to be, I guess, biased, but I got to go with Kentucky. I think everyone remembers Kentucky losing to Oakland last year. The name Jack Golke might ring some bells. He was the white guy on Oakland who just could not miss. And so Kentucky was a 3 seed last year and lost to the 14 seed. And this year, though, they're another 3 seed playing a 14. I really think Kentucky could go pretty far this year compared to last year. As you know, they don't have Coach Calipari anymore, who normally loses games that he shouldn't. So I think this year Kentucky has a bounce back and makes at least the Sweet 16.
What do you think about Arkansas and Coach Calipari then?
I wouldn't trust Arkansas. So their best player, Boogie Flan, got injured earlier in the season, and they started conference 0-5. He got injured a few games in, and then all of a sudden they went 8-5 after. Well, he's coming back for March, and statistics have just shown that they play worse when he's on the court. Not that he's a bad player, but they just run ISO ball through him. So I think him coming back is actually ultimately going to hurt them. I think they'll get bounced first round by Kansas.
So you said normally in previous brackets, the 1 through 3, not the 1, but the 2 through 4 teams have kind of been letdowns. I think in recent years, just losing earlier than a lot of people have them. So you think the 2 and 3 seeds, at least this year, are pretty solid all around. It's pretty top. It's a pretty top heavy bracket this year.
Yeah, I don't see any of the 2 seeds losing early, and I don't really see any. I could see the 3 seeds, like 1 or 2 of them potentially losing in the round of 32, such as like Iowa State, but most of the other 3 seeds any other year probably would have been a 2 seed, just with how dominant they've been.
All right, so who's your pick to win the whole thing? If you had to pick one team to win it all, who is that?
Well, I've been doing a lot of research about like metrics and which teams like have a chance based on past winners, and the only 2 teams that have a chance based on all the metrics over the past like 22 years are Florida and Duke. So I have Florida winning it all. I think down to the past month, they've been the best team in college basketball. They beat Bama by 20 last week. They beat Tennessee by 10. They beat Auburn at Auburn. They've dropped like 1 game. They lost to Georgia at Georgia, but I think that loss more than anything just humbled them a little bit and is going to fuel them to win it all this year. So I think Florida Gators are winning it all.
When you look at just the brackets in general, other than the 8 and 9 matchups in the first round, what are the matchups you think that people should be most looking at for some upsets? Numbers wise.
7 and 10 is always a big upset one. I think 10 seeds beat 7 seeds it was like 65% of the time or something, actually, with the 7 seeds only winning 35%. 5 and 12, there's always going to be a 12 seed that beats a 5 seed. It happens every year. And then 6 to 11, I think there's always an 11 seed that beats a 6 seed. And there's not always a 13 seed that beats a 4 seed, but I think that definitely could be a possibility this year.
Sweet. Everybody keep this all in mind when they're doing their brackets. All this information.
Mm-hmm. And, thanks for Seth for coming in, giving us all the insight, all the little nuggets of information that we need. But here's like to end our shows in under review. I've brought to you a quote from the John Calipari, and he said, "A successful person never loses. They either win or they learn."
Sounds like John Calipari just loses, apparently, according to Seth. It's basically what it is. Hey, we thank y'all for tuning in this week, and we thank Seth for stopping by, and I'm sure we'll see him next year. One question before you go, Seth. If you had to pick between LeBron James or Michael Jordan, who's the GOAT?
I'm gonna say LeBron James.
Okay, you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. We might be having Seth back
And there
on
you go.
later
He
this
just
summer.
invalidated everything you said for the last 15 minutes.
We might have Seth on at some point to argue the GOAT debate. So, just be looking out for that. But we thank Seth for stopping by. Thank y'all for tuning in. We'll see you next week with another episode of Under Review.